Test, 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 test. Council members, if you would take your seat at the dais, please, we'll get started. Councilmember Washington, Councilmember Abadamos.
Joseph? Ready to have fun. I gotta get it. Hey, Leon. Oh, Leon, just go to. Hey,
Ken.
I couldn't get you signed because by the time you heard me, I was gone.
Oh, no worries.
All right, how you doing?
It's a Warriors game, but I'm good. You're supposed to.
Yeah, right.
I reached out.
Oh, yeah.
You're it, dude.
Yeah, right.
How you doing? Good to see you.
Council members, we're ready to begin?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. All right. We'll call the meeting to order. Regular City Council meeting for City of American Canyon for April 2nd, 2024. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Miriam Abadamos.
Here.
Councilmember Mark Joseph.
Here.
Councilmember Pierre Washington.
Here.
Vice Mayor David Oro.
Here.
Mayor Leon Garcia.
Here. Thank you. We're going to move on now to report on closed session, confirmation of reportable action. Mr. Ross?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, members of the public,
The council, consisting of all members but Councilmember Abadamos, convened in open session at 5:30, and after ascertaining that there were no comments on the matters agendized for closed session consideration, adjourned to closed session at 5:31. Shortly after that, Councilmember Abadamos arrived. With respect to the matters agendized for closed session consideration, there will be a written report under the provisions of Government Code Section 54-957.1. I would note that with respect to one of the matters considered under closed session agenda item number 2, anticipated litigation, that both myself and Mr. Hawley were not present during that portion of the closed session from approximately 6:15 to 6:29. The closed session concluded at 6:29, and as indicated earlier, there will be a written report summarizing reportable action, if any. That would conclude the report unless there are questions.
Any questions from Mr. Ross?
No, sir.
Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Ross. Moving on with our agenda this evening. Where's that page? Moving on to proclamations and presentation. We have proclamations this evening. Very pleased to be able to offer these this evening. We have one for the Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Is there someone here to receive that? Please come to the podium. Thank you. I'll read it, then we'll have an opportunity to present it to you, and you can make some comments after. All right. State of American Canyon Proclamation. Sexual Assault Awareness Month, April 2024. Whereas News, Domestic Violence and Sexual Abuse Services is commemorating 42 years of service to survivors of domestic violence and sexual abuse in Napa County, and opened as the county's Rape Crisis Center in 2010 to provide safety to those experiencing sexual abuse. And whereas Sexual Assault Awareness Month is about promoting safety, respect, equality, and standing up and speaking out against harmful behavior, cultural norms, and attitudes that allow sexual violence to persist. This year's national campaign of Building Connected Communities helps to reduce the likelihood of sexual abuse, assault, and harassment in our communities. And whereas rape, sexual assault, and sexual harassment harm our community, statistics from the U.S. Center for Disease Control shows that over half of women and almost 1 in 3 men have experienced sexual violence involving physical contact during their lifetimes, and that 1 in 4 women and about 1 in 26 men have experienced completed or attempted rape. Sexual violence disproportionately affects women, minors, and racial and ethnic minority groups who experience a higher incident of sexual violence. And whereas by observing April as Sexual Assault Awareness Month, we show that our community is committed to supporting survivors and working toward the prevention of sexual violence across generations. And whereas in fiscal year 2022-2023, News provided services to nearly 1,800 of our Napa County community members, of which 271 survivors of sexual abuse, and nearly half of those were minors, including 24-hour response and crisis intervention, financial aid, advocacy, accompaniment, and assistance in civil and criminal justice proceedings, referrals and support completing victim compensation applications. And whereas in fiscal year 2022-23, News served 142 clients from the city of American Canyon, including children, 34 which experienced sexual assault. The News helpline received 162 calls for assistance from American Canyon residents. Client in American Canyon received emergency assistance and crisis intervention services, court advocacy, and accompaniment, including help preparing and filing restraining orders and support from our Sexual Assault Victims Services, SAVS, program. Now, therefore, I, Leon Garcia, Mayor, City of American Canyon, do on behalf of the American Canyon City Council, join News, advocates, and community associates across the country in taking action to proclaim April 2024 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month in American Canyon. And I ask the entire community to join in their effort, not only in April, but all year long. Be part of an effort to end sexual violence.
If I can just say quickly.
Oh, yes, well, we want a picture later.
Okay.
All right.
I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. I'm Christina Gomez, the Sexual Assault Victim Services Program Manager. And so you heard the numbers of what we deal with on a daily basis. That's not all reported cases, so those are some cases that people choose not to report. But I just wanted to say thank you to the City of American Canyon for this really important recognition this month. I think I can speak for my whole agency when I say that this is really our heart work. And I would also love to invite you all to our event that we're having. It's our big event for the month of April. It's called Walk a Mile in Her Shoes. And so it's basically an opportunity for folks to just kind of have a grasp for what it's like for a survivor to seek services. So it's going to be kind of like a resource type fair at the Veterans Park on Sunday, April 14 from 1 to 3. So I hope to see you all there.
Thank you. Just like to add, I certainly have availed staff I worked with when it was worked at Napa State Hospital with services available for them.
Oh, wonderful.
Of unfortunate things happening in their life.
Yeah.
But thank you for your service. It's just
Thank
to me
you.
it has a very personal touch.
Thank you very much. Our outreach, April is such an important month, but it's daily every single year. So it's not just April that we try to educate the community. So thank you so much.
Christina,
like to
did
get
you
a
say
picture,
April
no?
13th?
April 14th
14th at Veterans
April
Park in
14th.
Napa or American Canyon?
in Napa,
Okay.
downtown Napa.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
All right, shall we go? Okay, next on our agenda is proclamation April 2024 is Arts Month. That's you. Very good. City of American Canyon proclamation April 2024 is Arts Month. Whereas the arts, including visual and performing arts, literature, music, and crafts, are essential facets of a vibrant, dynamic community, enriching the lives of those who partake and appreciation of them. And whereas the celebration of arts during this month of April recognizes the contributions of artists and art organizations and encourages public participation in the arts. And whereas the arts play a critical role in the culture, education, and economic vitality of our community, fostering creativity, innovation, and unity across diverse populations. And whereas through workshops, exhibition, performances, and readings, Arts Month will showcase the rich tapestry of artistic talent within our community, offering a platform for artists to inspire and be inspired. And whereas engaging with the arts during April will not only enhance our appreciation for the myriad ways in which the arts enrich our lives, but also highlight the importance of supporting arts throughout the year. And whereas the American Canyon Arts Foundation, one of the oldest community organizations in American Canyon, continues to maintain, enhance, and support the role of arts in our community by bringing artists and community members together through recreational, cultural, and economic art events, programs, and shows. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Leon Garcia, Mayor of the City of American Canyon, on behalf of the City Council, do proclaim April as Arts Month in American Canyon and call upon our community to celebrate and participate in the arts. Let us recognize and support the artists and arts organization and that contribute to our cultural wealth in our community, and let us encourage each other to explore, experience, and express our creative through arts. I got two of them. Let me stand up there too. Yeah. Oh, very good. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Just got to say a couple things, then we're good. Okay, good. Thank you for what you did.
A shameless plug for the art extravaganza.
Well, good evening. My name is Clarence Mammarell, the Vice President of the American Canyon Art Foundation, as well as the Chair of the Performing Arts Committee. And I just want to express on behalf of the American Canyon Arts Foundation our thanks and gratitude to Mayor Garcia and our City Council for not only the proclamation, but also for supporting the visual artists and the performing artists of this community. We're very lucky to, be at the forefront of seeing just how talented and amazingly creative our city is. And so, we thank you for that. We also are very grateful for the long-term lease of several rooms at the Napa Junction Community Center. Now that we have a place to call home, we're able to do so many more interesting events. One event that we have every month is Open Mic American Canyon, where performing artists and visual artists actually show off their creativity. On the second weekend of April, April 12th and April 13th, we also have our American Canyon Arts Extravaganza, which took a hiatus because of COVID, but we're back and we're ready to show off the creative talents of adult artists in the community. And we also recently finished our second annual American Canyon High School Arts and Music Fest. So, a display of the creative talents of our high school. And we did that in collaboration with the visual and performing artists, art instructors of American Canyon High School. And one of them's here, Mr. Adam Musto, who's the ceramics instructor, and he's here to say a few words of gratitude as well.
Thank you, Clarence. Yes, we just had, the second annual, although we can thank the Arts Foundation for now, I guess we're year 14 as a high school, and from day one, Mark Joseph, Clarence, et cetera, have been present to support the visual and performing arts at the high school from day one. And their ongoing efforts are deeply appreciated. And they just, in fact, very generously granted some, I guess it's grants, call it that, to all the individual programs in the visual and performing arts at the high school for the second year in a row. And those monies are deeply appreciated. As you know, nothing is cheaper and everything seems to cost more. I do want to extend a note of gratitude to the state electorate, you people that voted for Prop 128. It's now kind of a couple years ago, but those monies are beginning to now budget in, and so much needed monies that will support our band and orchestras and chorus and visual and performing arts programs will have the funds that you people voted for, which is a big help. Again, thank you for the proclamation. The high school, we appreciate it. We've had always support from the community. And I don't know, you could tell them better. How was the turnout for the art show? I unfortunately wasn't there. So, but it's getting better. I know that the the public is invited, and, I mean,
It's, not bad. It's, we are, generally increasing in attendance, but we can honestly use more. And, hopefully now that you know about it, and, we will double our efforts in making it, better known in the community. Everyone is invited. It's a free event. Come in and, see our amazingly talented high school students. So we just encourage you to go next year, and we'll let you know when that is.
thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
We'll get a picture now. Very good. We'll continue with our agenda at this point. We now have public comment items that are not on the agenda. We do have a public hearing later in the agenda this evening. There'll be time for comment and on that matter. But anything not on the agenda, please come to the podium. No?
I have Hugh Marquez. Oh, if you want to make a comment, please fill out a comment card on that counter, and someone will take it from you and bring it up to me. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I come to you tonight to commend you on the growth of our city. I think you guys have managed it efficiently. There's people who'd say otherwise, but I know you guys have looked at all the facts and looked at everything and have done very well in trying to help our city grow. I'm coming to you today because as it's growing, I want to remind you that we have a public works department, and as our city grows, our employees should grow too. It's concerning to me that I've found that we only have 6 public work employees with a city that we have this big. Now, there's managers and there's but that are actual boots on the ground. And so I come to you to ask you to think of our future and not wait until it's a catastrophe, and think about helping our city grow by being able to maintain our city. And with that, we will need public works employees. We will need people that'll be boots on the ground. So that's all I come to. Thank you.
Thank you. Next
Ken?
speaker, please.
Ken Leary.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and distinguished council members. My name is Ken Leary. I live here in American Canyon. I like to walk the city. I guess people see me around walking. And when I'm at a crosswalk or things, city staff will stop in my neighborhood and other neighborhoods. So will residents. Well, the other day, after walking so many miles, 8.5 just to brag a little bit, I'm getting ready to cross the street, and I see this white truck coming down. So I peer out, thinking he would stop, but doesn't stop. I'm in the crosswalk. I look. It says Bright Angel. Bright, the ones that do our, is it Bright Angel or what is it, the people who we have contract with? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It didn't stop. And, you know, I spoke before, and I know it's a challenge, especially when our cities are starved, but to build a safer city, I think Public Works, and I didn't even know he was going to talk about this, but having staff who live and work, get vacation, health care, and these kinds of things, they're more likely to be able to live in the town. And if they live in the town, they look out for the town. They look out for the people. These contract workers don't. Their bosses don't. We used to have lots of city staff, and I think our cities were safer. It's a product of distrust, disloyalty, not liking government. But not liking government is us, all of us in this room. We've got to do better, put more people to work who are going to live and participate in the city. We will have a safer city and a much enjoyable one. So that's all I have to say for tonight. So thank you very much. And
Thank you. If you'd like to pass on that incident, Mr. Lurie, to Mr. Hawley, he can circle back with the contractor.
yeah, okay.
All right? Thank you. We appreciate your comment. Next speaker, please.
Cap Prasad.
Good evening,
evening.
council members, and good evening, public. I've been here before, but this is the first time after 3 years that I'm here today to address a couple of things that are happening in our city. Number one that I have been noticing is I live on Entrada Circle off of Broadway Street. In 2022, in the broad daylight, somebody came in at my house and stole roof. I reported the matter to the police, and then nothing happened. Claimed the insurance. They took 3 months to do it, but I just paid for it and got rid of it. Anyway, what I'm here today for is, as you all know, the city of Vallejo is putting a rehab center. And we, the homeowners over there, will be affected. Either the price is going to go down, or people will not come to live there. And I have seen homeless people getting in there. About 2 weeks ago, there was police there, and now I don't see that. So I strongly recommend that Broadway should be looked into ASAP to get it upgraded. Whether we have police there, security cameras, or a mini police station, whatever works. On Cartagena Way, this is the second phase, which is off of Entrada Circle. The city has signed that the road is not fixed. It has been sitting there for the last 3 years, and nothing has been done. The previous guy that spoke, I think he is right that we should have enough manpower to get these things straightened. I have my neighbor here. He's the one who reported about my roof being stolen, and he saw it. So we are concerned, homeowners, that we want this matter to be, looked into so that we are still living in this city. If it doesn't happen, I'm sorry, but I have to move out. That's all I got. Thank you.
Well, sir, I appreciate your comment. I know we all do here on the council. If we could circle back with Mr. Hawley,
Okay.
He can certainly bring you up to date on everything happening with Home Key.
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
And the other matter as well. I think it's important that it be looked into.
Yes, there may be other residents here off of Broadway Street who might want to talk about that.
Yeah.
So I'm one of them, so.
We've had an extensive conversation in the past on that.
Yeah.
We have.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
So I just wanted to quickly, it's actually been 4 years, And every year, they
Come to the podium and identify yourself, please.
it's actually been 4 years, and every year they just move the sign. Someone just comes and assesses the situation, but nothing gets done. And it's getting to the point where it's getting very frustrating, because
Okay.
even if you have 6 employees, it's been 4 years. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. It's almost making me want to call Michael Finney at this point.
All right. No, thank you
Just
for
to get things
Thank you for
moving.
bringing it up. Your name, we need to have it for the record. What-
Okay.
Ma'am, what's your name?
Karen Blandino, Blandino.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
I gave Maria the card. Beth Marcus.
Good evening, Beth Marcus. I just want to thank Chief Greenberg and his department for the quick response yesterday to Safeway. I don't want to belabor the whole situation, but I appreciate that they keep us up to date on everything that's going on. And I was reading comments online, and I was really amazed to see that some people were actually saying, are we safe in American Canyon? And I'm thinking to myself, every time there's a crime here, which is not committed by our residents, they always arrest the people. So why is everybody so worried about what's going on? Because they are on the spot, and they arrest the people almost immediately. So I just want to publicly thank him for, I feel extremely safe here. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Karen Fritz.
Good evening, Council, Mayor, public. I just wanted to ask if there's a problem with the Channel 28 viewing of the council meetings, because every time my husband and I try to watch it on Channel 28, we get Cotati or another city in the area. We haven't been able to get American Canyon for quite some time. So if somebody could maybe find out what
Yep.
that
Thank
is.
you. Certainly, we will look into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
On another note, I wanted to thank the Parks Maintenance crews for doing an exceptional job down at Gadwall Park. They went in there and cleaned out all the shaggy brush and cleaned it up really nice, and they just stay right on top of it. It looks great every day. And we look forward to seeing them out there with the monster mower on Tuesdays. So. And I also read on Nextdoor today, somebody was complimenting whoever fills the mutt mitts stations over in Kimberly Park area. They were very grateful for that as well, in case you don't see that on Nextdoor. And then on a third note, I have a question about the amount of residents in an apartment complex and the amount of parking allowed for those. Everything that I've looked at, it's like you have 66 apartments and you have 80 parking spaces, and most apartments have 2 vehicles in them. I'm saying the majority of them would. And the same goes for all these other massive apartment complexes that we have, as far as parking goes. You have a lot of residential housing in those, and then you have few parking spaces. But on Commerce, out in the industrial area that we walk by all the time, you have this massive warehouse that's going to have possibly 35 full-time employees, maybe 45 to 50 during a busy season per se, and they're required to have 140 parking spaces. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I don't know if something needs to be reevaluated on parking versus the amount of people in a dense area or not, because it just doesn't sound like it should be that way. Also, I think that's it. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your comments, ma'am. I know on the note on the Public Works crew, they really do a great job, in my view. You know, they just try and stay on top of everything, so. Yep. Next speaker, please.
Karen Blandino, did you have another comment, Karen, or you're good with the comment that you made? Okay. All right, good. Thank you. We have no other comment cards.
Anyone online?
There are no hands raised online.
Very good, thank you. If there are no other speakers, then I will close public comment at this time on matters not on the agenda. And we'll continue with our agenda. Any agenda changes, council, or I'll accept a motion to accept the consent calendar.
There's no agenda changes. I'll make the motion to adopt the consent calendar.
I'll second. Motion and second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Abadamas left as planned at 7. Councilmember Mark Joseph.
Yes.
Councilmember Councilmember Pierre Washington.
Yes.
Vice Mayor David Oro.
Yes.
Mayor Leon Garcia.
Yes. Thank you, council. Well, we'll move forward with our public hearing agenda item this evening. Utility rate increases, Proposition 218, protest hearing. Mr. Hawley?
Yes, Mayor. Thank you. Thank you, Council. Tonight's actions are opening the public hearing, receiving public comment, and closing the public hearing, determining whether a majority of the property owner protests have been received, and then considering an ordinance related to utility rates. And tonight's matter is the continuation of a multi-step process that we've been in since 2022. The process has involved a group of citizens, volunteers, who've, as a part of a committee, helped city staff and our consultants review the city's utility enterprises and the financial conditions that they're in, and helped with our recommendations and helped guide our process. That Utility Rate Advisory Committee, there are some of the members of that committee here tonight. The last time we were before the council was in January of this year, and at that time the council received a presentation from our consultant team and city staff, and we talked about the path that we had been on and the uses of the monies that will be raised under the rate increases, the need for those increases, and the process that we'd be undertaking to communicate tonight's hearing and the potential changes to the community. We undertook a series of notification materials, the first of which was a 4-page double-sided notice that went to all property owners and account holders, or ratepayers as we call them. All told, about 10,000 of those went out. So we wanted to make sure that those notices went to every, like I said, property owner and ratepayer. Those notices described in great detail all of the proposed changes and were required by the California Constitution to send out that notice. In fact, we're required to send it out 45 days in advance of this hearing. So back in January, the council authorized the sending of that notice and then set tonight as the date for the public hearing for your consideration of those proposed increases. But beyond just what's required as a minimum notice, we also did a lot more outreach. Every address, at least according to the Postal Service, every address in American Canyon got one of these. It's a 2-sided summary of what was in our rate study and what was in our notices. And it provided, most importantly, a QR code here and a place where everyone who received this could get more information. We wanted to ensure that even some folks, for example, that might live in an apartment building or in a mobile home park who might not be ratepayers themselves or property owners would also be notified of this and have an opportunity to learn more. In addition to those notifications, we also conducted outreach as far as printed materials downstairs at City Hall. Since roughly mid-February, there's been a large poster board. Actually, sorry, the poster board is upstairs at City Hall. It's been a large poster board notifying folks who come and pay their bills and anyone who comes into City Hall of these potential changes. And we also had that same notice prominently displayed on our virtual City Hall, also known as our city website. We had notices in English, Spanish, and Tagalog that were readily available. And we also had the actual consultant rate study published on that website. We also had some customer resources displayed, frequently asked questions, some options for low-income customers. We developed a calculator function on our website so the residents could go and enter information and have a better understanding of what their future bill might look like. We also included a printable form that folks could print and sign and submit to us, letting us know that they protested the potential council action. We also provided information about cost comparisons between our proposed changes and elsewhere. And in addition to all that, we included a series of communications in our city manager update, which goes out bi-weekly. There's roughly 14,000 email addresses, and about 65% or so of them open up those emails every time. So we tried a variety of methods to make sure that this message about tonight was available to the community. And in large part, we think the community has become aware of this hearing tonight. Our utility infrastructure system is actually 3 different systems. We provide potable water, recycled water, and sanitary sewer services to all of the properties within our service area, which is actually bigger even than the city's municipal limits. Each one of these services is operated independently of each other. The funding related to those services is all kept separately and tracked separately, so the revenue and expenses for water or wastewater or recycled water are all kept separately. They're not used for other programs. They're not used for the general fund. They are what we call enterprises, and they have to be accounted for separately, and they must stand on their own. We can't use one fund that may be short on revenue, and we can't use funds from another fund to fill those coffers. They have to stand on their own, and the primary revenue source for those enterprises is rate revenue, whether they be fixed charges or variable charges. The primary source is rate revenue. This area of utility enterprises is highly regulated and codified in our California Constitution. The most prominent revision to the California Constitution as it relates to this was what's known as Proposition 218, which set out very prescriptive requirements for how charges for these property-related fees and charges can be assessed. And it also specified the process I just talked about as far as notification and so forth. The other point I'll make about our enterprises is that they're all publicly owned, meaning that the city takes whatever revenue it has, and if we pay for the expenses with each of these enterprises, and if there's money left over at the end of the year, that money is reinvested back into the system. And so we don't have private investors, we don't have a profit margin or anything like that. There are other utilities in California, privately owned investor utilities such as PG&E, which have private investors, which have profits and so forth. And when they have a good year, those funds all go back to their investors. In our case, should we end up from year to year with a little bit more revenue than expenses, that money is all put into fund balance and it's used for the expenses in the upcoming year. It doesn't go to any kind of shareholders or anything. We do have, in each of these 3 enterprises, we have some costs that are fixed, meaning the cost that we have every month or each year is independent of how much of that service we're providing. The analogy for that would be your home. If you have a mortgage when you purchased your home, the cost of that mortgage is the same every month. Even if you go on vacation for a couple of weeks out of the year, the mortgage company still charges you that same fixed amount. It doesn't depend on how many nights of sleep that you have. But your PG&E bill, for example, would depend on it. If you're at home, you turn on the lights, you're going to have PG&E costs, whereas if you're away, generally those costs are not going to be the same. So those would be an example of variable costs, whereas the mortgage would be an example of a fixed cost. And so the city has similar costs, some which are fixed and some which are variable. And so we've delineated our rate structure for these property-based fees to recognize that some costs are fixed. So we try to have revenue that is also fixed to match that. And then we have variable costs, and we try to have our revenue match our variable costs. The last time that American Canyon updated its water rates was in 2018. And the last time that we updated our wastewater rates was 2007. We've never had a formal rate for recycled water. We have had specific contracts for our delivery of recycled water, and American Canyon itself is actually our biggest customer of recycled water. And so the action tonight proposes to make changes to water rates, wastewater rates, and then establish recycled water rates. We set up our process in our municipal code to give staff the authority each year administratively to increase the rates based on inflation. The Consumer Price Index is a popular tool that's meant to be a surrogate for inflation. But the Consumer Price Index, the CPI as it's called, doesn't always match the cost pressures we're seeing. And particularly for us, the cost of maintenance, the cost of construction, and so forth, even the cost of some of our materials like chemicals and things like that have outpaced our inflation index. We also have other challenges like regulatory costs, the aging infrastructure that we have. Some parts are old and some parts are new, and a lot of the aging infrastructure we have has needed investment from construction costs. Also these potential rate increases will help us continue to participate in the Sites Reservoir Project, which is a new surface water reservoir that the city is participating in. And that's an exciting project that has a lot of really important milestones that will be occurring hopefully this year. Like I mentioned, this group of volunteers, this Utility Rate Advisory Committee, began in late 2022 and met several times to really help understand the costs and revenue opportunities and rate programs. And we thank all the committee members for their service, and including those that are here tonight. It was invaluable to have them be a part of that process and allowed them to give us feedback, which was important. Our consultant firm by the name of NBS prepared what is known as a cost of service analysis, and Alan Highsmith with NBS is here tonight if there are questions. But this utility rate structure is really based around this cost of service analysis, and attachment to Exhibit A in the packet, starting on, I guess it's page 54 of your packet, is that final version of the rate study. So what's changed since January? So we sent out the notices with council authorization. We set tonight's hearing date. We didn't just stop. We continued to look, and we continued to evaluate our proposals, our recommendations. And there were a couple of changes that are noticed here in the staff report. All of these changes, and I'm starting now on page 44 of the packet, all of these changes will have the effect of not increasing the rates or charges as much as was proposed in the notice. So all of them are less than we noticed, and all of them are less than what we were seeking approval for in January from the council. As it relates to the potable water now, and I'm going to go through a series of these changes. As it relates to the potable water, again, we have two sets of charges. We have our fixed charges, which are meant to cover our fixed costs, and we have our variable rate, which is a dollars per unit rate. So as it relates to the fixed charges, we are still recommending to move forward with the increases that were shown in attachment 2, which was the notice. As it relates to variable rates, however, we're recommending that the council not proceed forward with those increases. And there's a couple of reasons, but the main reason that we're recommending not having those increases take place is because we expect to be growing our customer base a little bit. The Watson Ranch project, and I appreciate the public commenters' comments earlier about, essentially commending us for a good job as how we've been building out this community. We hadn't fully considered the new customers that are going to be coming online, particularly with the Watson Ranch project, but in other places. So what happens when you bring on new customers is their cost of service in a true form is really less because all their infrastructure is brand new and someone else paid for that infrastructure. It wasn't paid for by the rates. It was paid for by private capital from the developers. But the amount of breakages, the amount of repairs and so forth from a brand new system, much, much lower than the system, for example, in Rancho, which was new 60 years ago and much of which needs to be rebuilt. So by having some new customers come on board, they still pay the same rate as the customers in the other parts of town that have been here a while. But in effect, really not much of their costs are the same. So we're able to take into consideration we're going to have a little more ratepayers, and they're not going to have that same cost burden as our existing ratepayers. And so when you effectively broaden out your denominator in an equation, which is how much cost you need to recover, but you have a little bit broader base, then you begin to spread out those costs a little bit more. And we also started looking at the straight line trajectory of what was proposed and the increases, and we compared that to what we already had an administrative authority for, which is generally up to 3% based on the CPI. And what we found was instead of growing by 19% over 5 years, we could grow by 15.9% over 5 years under existing authority. And when you combine that with the broadened base of additional customers in Watson Ranch, you get pretty close. And so we felt like, in a growing environment, we could scale back the request on the rates and, in fact, not have the council take action at all on those rates and see how it plays out with the additional customers, which themselves are going to have lower cost pressures. As it relates to our recycled water, this is a really unique situation. Not many cities are recycled water providers to begin with, and very few of them have recycled water funds. This is going to be a new enterprise fund that we're building from scratch. Although we've had the facilities for a number of years now, they're not as old as some of our other systems. We've had the facilities for a number of years. We're building a third enterprise fund. Not many cities have 3 enterprise funds. So it's a little bit harder to get a true test of what the financial needs are going to be of a brand new enterprise. In particular, much of the infrastructure that was built out in the recycled water, much of those assets were paid for by grants, but others were paid for by loans. So both the wastewater fund and the water fund actually loaned money and are now going to be repaid back under this fund structure. But all of those systems were built using different financing mechanisms than the water and wastewater systems that were built when American Canyon first started growing. And so we don't have the same broad customer base on recycled water. And like I noted before, the city itself, the city's general fund, is actually the biggest customer. The recycled water fund itself has the biggest opportunity for growth, particularly for new customers. We have a new pipeline that was built. We've connected Compark 2, Middle School, the American Canyon Middle School, Boys and Girls Club, Compark 1. We have a new pipeline that was extended in the Tower Road area. We have a number of commercial businesses there that will be connected. And then we have a developer who's building a pipeline that will connect the Little League and some of the other facilities right there. So opportunities to, again, expand that base of customers. And when we went back and looked and really started to use some different planning documents, particularly our urban water management plan, and we started really looking at the future for our recycled water program, we felt like there were additional customers that could come online and that had the effect of being able to lower the variable rate for recycled water. We were also very concerned about having a recycled water variable rate that too closely approximated the potable water rate. That had less to do with the science and math involved and more had to do with the semantics. But we were concerned about that because it is one of our third pillars of our water resource portfolio. We wanted to make sure that, that it wasn't too close to that potable water side. That is the rate that has the most likely chance of either staying the same or even potentially getting lower over time because future capital projects, future projects to build out more pipelines are going to be, for the most part, either developer-led or grant-led. So there shouldn't be as much on the cost pressure side. And again, that system is also relatively new. We've established a variable rate for 2 different scenarios. So if we deliver the recycled water to the property, there is a delivery rate, if you will, we still have self-haul options for our customers. And so we built that rate in to exclude some of the costs that we have for actual delivery, and the self-haul is really reflective of what it takes to just produce the recycled water. I should take a step back. We use in this report and in the analysis the term unit, and that kind of almost belies what a unit is, and I sort of regret not bringing in the 750-gallon tank in here to demonstrate what that looks like, but it's a very large tank, equivalent to, roughly 15 or so bathtubs is what 700.
It's good. That's a big white plastic cube with metal bars all around it. People probably see them in people's yards.
Right, exactly, right. So it's a very large quantity. It's 748 gallons. So we call it a unit for ease of calculation, believe it or not, but it doesn't really just do a good job of describing how big an actual unit is. And for 1 unit of recycled water, for example, would be $1.88. As it relates to our sewer fund, we're recommending moving forward with the increases for the residential and commercial customer classes. That represents all of our customers with the exception of 3. And again, this is the fund that hasn't been updated beyond inflationary increases since 2007, and the world has changed quite a bit in that arena since 2007. At the time, our water reclamation facility was just a couple of years old and had just been recently completed. So particularly regulatory, we have all sorts of compliance costs. The water reclamation facility collects all of the wastewater in American Canyon and our industrial areas, and then treats it and does one of 2 things with it. It either treats it and discharges it to San Francisco Bay, or it treats it and we turn on and deliver that as recycled water. The regulatory compliance, we continue to make improvements at the facility because we have to, because our permit requires it, and because it's good for the environment. We want to make sure that our discharge that goes out into San Francisco Bay doesn't injure the environment. And so there's another example of some construction upgrades. Much of the oldest part of our system is in our sewer system, and we have projects, a capital program that contemplates rebuilding portions of our old collection system. One of the unique phenomenons about the treatment plant is it has sort of a tale of 2 seasons, if you will. In the summertime, low flows are going into the plant. There are higher concentrations of constituents, and there's a certain processes that we have to go through to treat that lower volume of water to then be able to discharge or recycle. When we're in the rainy season, as we're just getting out of now, it's completely the opposite, particularly because much of our older system leaks. It leaks on the way in, and so rainwater and groundwater and such actually starts to flood that system. And so in the wintertime, we can experience at times a 10-fold increase of what we experience in the summer. And that water is diluted, highly diluted. It's mostly rainwater, so it doesn't have the same constituent loadings, but our plant still has to kick into overdrive to be able to treat that much, much, much higher volume. And so the facility is designed to do both, but the operations are quite a bit different. The chemical needs are quite a bit different. And the membranes themselves, we have an advanced treatment facility that uses membranes. The membranes themselves have a life cycle. About 8 or so years ago, we replaced the membranes for the first time. They were literally on their last legs, and we had to finance them. We had to pay a bank to give us the money to replace those filters, those membranes. This time around, as part of the capital program, we're proposing a capital investment in cash and not having to pay a bank for financing. So there's just one example. But we also have projects rebuilding the oldest parts of our system so they won't leak anymore. And those are 2 major investments that you see in the capital program that's shown in the rate study. The last note I'll make about the sewer rates is we have 3 sewer customers who are classified as significant industrial users. These customers have discharge permits from the city, and they're treated entirely different from any of our other customer classes. And they actually are required to already pre-treat their waste before it ever comes to us. We have certain standards. They must pre-treat it before it ever comes to us. They measure the volume. They measure the constituent loading. We have specific agreements with them about when and where and how much of all these discharges that can be discharged. We're currently working on a project at the Water Reclamation Facility that will change the way that the reclamation facility operates. We're viewing this as an economic opportunity, a chance to bring on more industrial customers, a chance to have a better employment base in the Green Island area. and so forth. And when that project comes along to a phase where we're ready to try and start figuring out how to finance that, the current SIUs and hopefully the potential new SIUs are all going to be part of their own rate study process, because there's going to be a significant capital expenditures needed to do that, and they're all going to be part of that picture. So we wanted to kind of distinguish those two. So we're recommending at the moment leaving the SIUs in their current treatment position and their current classifications and rate payments. As we move into that high-strength project, they're going to be going through a significant upgrade. There will be, excuse me, they and some other SIUs will be going through their own rate study process, and we're not going to be commingling those two processes. There will be a specific Prop 218 processes for our current and future SIUs. So it's we're fortunate that our the Green Island industrial area is completely isolated as far as pipelines in the system from our residential and commercial customers by and large. So we're able to keep those two systems separate, and when we come back in the future, probably in the next 18 to 24 months, we'll be looking at a rate study just for those customer classes. But at the moment, we're not recommending taking any action on those SIUs. Kind of lastly, as we look at a regional comparison, just wanted to note the average household in American Canyon uses about 7 units per month. That's a single family house and a family living there. It's about 7 units per month. And so, we started looking at the total utility bill. Sometimes people don't realize in American Canyon what you get from us is a total utility bill. It has both a component for water and for wastewater services. Other places may just send a water bill. Other places put the sewer bill on the property tax, and it's not done monthly. But in American Canyon, you get a bill that includes both services. And so we compared, our current rates versus our proposed rates on a total monthly bill basis, assuming, again, a 7-unit household residential. So that's what the chart there on page 45 shows. It shows us near the middle and then increasing, increasing essentially $22 a month in year one. So again, we'll talk just a little bit about the presentation tonight. I've concluded my remarks, and it'd be appropriate to open the public hearing and receive public comments. Public testimony doesn't substitute for a written protest, so if anyone has a written protest, we'd encourage you to sign your name and your address and to put it in the box over there. Once the testimony is received and the public hearing is closed, we're going to count up all the written protests that have been received to date. The California Constitution, again, Prop 218, would prohibit the council from taking action if more than 50% of the property owners protest that by written protest. And so part of our counting is to determine whether that threshold has been met or not. The last aspect, assuming the council is able and chooses to move forward, we would be adopting these rates now, but they would become effective on January 1st of 2025. From there, the scheduled increases or the inflation increases would occur the following January 1st. And certainly, that's the last of what I have. If the council had any questions for me, we could discuss those, or we could go and open the public hearing and hear public comment.
Thank you very much for the detailed report. It's points out the complexities that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis just to provide minimal service that we all access. And certainly something we need to consider in terms of operation economically, but certainly delivering the quality of services that meets the standards that we all should have as well. And certainly the economic cost of that is one of those factors. Council want to make comments now in public hearing? What's your preference?
A couple of clarifying questions.
Sure. All right. Councilmember Joseph.
Yes. First of all, thank you for the lengthy report. I do want to clarify one question because I've heard a lot of that. The concern that somehow our utility rates are subsidizing the cost of new development. So can you clarify the relationship between capacity fees and impact fees on water and wastewater customers versus our ongoing utility customers?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, Councilmember Joseph. What's not included in the package tonight and is subject to a different process are what's known, as you referenced, as capacity fees or developer impact fees, Nexus fees. All those terms mean the same thing. So every new development that comes forward in American Canyon pays a fee. It's either by square foot or by dwelling unit. We go through another set of studies to figure out what those fees should be, and those monies are collected, and then they're spent on projects that relate to that new development. So in some instances, developers build the new pipelines for their project. The Watson Ranch is a classic example of that. They're building all of their infrastructure. In other cases, the city will either undertake some of those projects with those developer fees, but we don't use ratepayer dollars, that is dollars paid by existing customers, to fund those developer projects. And I think that's maybe the important point that you wanted to make. So in this case, when we have new development that comes online, as I mentioned earlier, it actually has the benefit of those new customers paying full freight. They pay the full amount of their bill, but their infrastructure was paid for either by the developers themselves or with other developers' money. Either way, it wasn't any of the ratepayers' money that was spent on that. And so you have new customers who, from an operations and maintenance perspective, in the early years, your refrigerator works fine. It's not till you're 30 or 40 that your refrigerator starts to break. So those new customers don't have the same operational costs that our current customers have, but they still pay those same ratepayer dollars. So we're able to then use that revenue to fix old parts of our system. And so there is a benefit of new development. I hope that answered your question.
And even beyond that, there are some occasions where that new development that has to, say, upsize a sewer line could actually replace an old sewer line with a larger, newer one because that's their obligation. Mm-hmm. And then the current ratepayers actually benefit because they get the benefit of a new pipeline that the developer paid for. So I just wanted to clarify that. The other one is just a comment. I appreciate the fact that we have gone from a big increase in water down to essentially taking the variable rate increase out, so it'll now just be the same cost of living as it has been. And that we have, even though the fixed rate is going up, we got to remember, for those people that are on a low income or fixed income, if they're eligible for the PG&E's CARE program, we've also been able to set up a program where you can then apply to get some or all of that fixed rate covered through basically other revenues that the city has that we can use to help you out. So the point I'm making is I appreciate the fact that these increases are tough, especially if you're on a fixed income. And we have done what we could to kind of keep those increases from being as bad as they are, and that there are ways, if your financial condition is such, where we can help you even more. And so I just wanted to emphasize that because I think it's important. I know no one in here is probably going to say, I'm so appreciative of these new increases because you're trying to keep ahead of the infrastructure costs. But I do want to emphasize there are ways in which the city can help you out, but you do have to take advantage of it. Thank you.
It's a great point, Councilmember Joseph, and I just wanted to add a specific thing onto that. So we're very restricted, and we are required to keep these funds separate from each other, and we're also required to keep classes of ratepayers separate from each other. So we're not able to do a litmus test and say high-income ratepayers pay 2x and low-income folks pay 1/2x. That applies to most of our fund, but there is a small portion of our fund, namely its interest and penalties and things, that is revenue for that fund, but we're not restricted. And so it's that little pot of money we're able to use for folks who will have income challenges. It's a very simple process, we think, that folks can come to us. The PG&E CARE program, I'm glad you mentioned, is a great program, and most likely folks in this room's PG&E bill is more expensive than this utility bill. If you are challenged and on a fixed income, you should be enrolled in that PG&E CARE program because you can save money there if you're not. But if you are, all you have to do is bring us a copy of that bill. We say, okay, that works. We don't need any further verification process. We believe that the PG&E CARE program has done a sufficient verification for that. So it's very, very simple for our customers. Sorry, thank you.
Yep, thank you for that comment. Appreciate it. That helps people understand it a little better. Councilmember Washington.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Hawley, for your presentation.
And I also want to thank you for the last couple of weeks, all the phone calls I've given you with questions that different residents have had that brought to my attention. It actually helped me learn a lot about the water rates and the rates that we have going on as well. So thank you, residents, for asking me the questions. I also want to thank the committee that was put together, made of American Canyon residents, for the time they spent putting this together. It was a task given to them, and I think they did a very good job making that presentation for staff and then to present to us. Mr. Holly mentioned earlier 2 notifications that went out, mail notifications that went out, and I was just hoping I might be able to see a show of hands of anyone who did not receive that notification. And then for the record, I don't see any hands up right now. Okay. Well, I mean, I also think that we did an excellent job as a city trying to communicate a tough situation to the community, but we've done all the resources, so I clap my hands out to the communication team for putting that out, you know, the mailers, the monthly or the weekly city manager reports I thought were informative as well. And again, you know, residents did reach out to me. I did reach out to you several times, and I got back to, I believe, most of the residents that reached out to me. Besides that, I really want to hear what the residents here have to say regarding the increases. I know it's not going to be the most glorifying type thing to talk about, but we're prepared to listen and then hear your points. And I just thank you for being here tonight.
Very good. Good. Yeah, I appreciate it. Public participation is a way we all gain a better understanding and understand the economics of it. You know, we have to pay the cost for it, and there's ways explained. It's a number of options are available for those who are economically challenged. Certainly, that helps people. The infrastructure we put in place, we've done a lot of things. Well, unique to American Canyon, with respect to water usage, minimizing the impact of during the drought. If you look at the apartments across the street over here, first apartment house built, all the toilets in that apartment house are on recycled water. And to get that over there, that was the water increment that they needed to open that building because we didn't have the water. We had for years something called zero water footprint. If you're a developer building a project, you need water. Where are you going to get it from? Well, there's such things as buying at cost from say a different service provider. But there's also an offset. See, if you got recycled water in the toilets over there, then that's not using potable water. So that's saving that for our other uses. Part of the project also was the developer had to bring the purple pipe on the other side of the highway. All the landscaping now is on recycled water. That adds up. Years back, related to that, if you go north here to Napa, remember years ago, you see all the tulies on the side of the road. That was all the leaks in the main water line that came through to American Canyon. Patches on patches that were patched, et cetera, et cetera. We had it relined. See, Coca-Cola bottling plant wanted an increase in their water allocation. Well, I forget how many 100 acre feet a year was that, Mr. Hawley? Lost through that pipe.
2017.
How many acre feet of water?
Yeah, it was,
it was several hundred.
Yeah, it was close.
Several
to
hundred acre feet of water. Just that's potable water that we're paying for, so before we even put it in the pipeline to serve our customers. They had to reline it. We did it all in house. It saved over $1 million, and we now have that water line secure. When Mr. Hawley's talking about older infrastructure that needs repair, that was a huge one. So creativity on our side was able to save water loss, increase water conservation, better use. Village at Vintage Ranch, across from Safeway over there, that's another one. All the toilets in that building are on recycled water. That saves water. Okay. In the way of adjusting the rates, there's analysis too. When you have growth, developers pay for the infrastructure. Yes, they have to pay for that. The ratepayer is paying a fee for what they're consuming. Okay. That's what helps apply for repair rates. So you have to think of this as a separate business entirely. That we're all working, so-called the water is a separate business, the wastewater is a separate business, recycled water is a separate business. And you have to pay for the infrastructure on it. And you have to pay for the service. And with the cost of water going up, state is now looking at water allocation throughout, particularly in the Delta area. I was reading a piece recently on that, cutting back water in Solano County to 25%. That's going to be a pretty difficult conversation to have. But that's going to need it for Reliance. Cities are about 7% of what comes off the mountains. Farming is about 40%. Environmental sustainability is 50%. So there's a lot of ways to look at how we view water. Council ready for public comment?
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you all being here and participating. We'll now take public comment on this matter.
David Garcia Areola.
Hello, everyone. My name is David Garcia Areola. I'm a citizen here in American Canyon. I want to thank Jason for the presentation and the council members.
Thank you. Just the
so
mic,
much.
please. I'd just like to remind folks your comments are limited to 3 minutes.
Okay. All right. So, everyone, I have some comments to share regarding the rate study. So, when the rates study committee was formed, I just wanted to know, how was the study committee structured, and when did these meetings occur? Because I attempted to look over videos on the city website and YouTube, but I was unsuccessful. And I believe these meetings should have, been more advertised. Could have been a more inclusive vision rather than having these meetings discussed behind closed doors. And for my following comment, I know we were comparing the city of American Canyon with the city of Vallejo and the city of Napa. These cities are twice, if not triple, the size of our city. Napa and Vallejo both have multiple water treatment plants where we only have 2. In addition, I would like for the organization to share work orders from the computer maintenance management system from the past 5 years or maybe even 10 years to have a better understanding of how these funds are being managed. If we do not have a computer maintenance management system, I believe the organization should integrate a CMS program to revisit rate studies after 1 year of implementation, because this could possibly allow innovation and possibly not need the rate of these high integration such programs. And also considering the physical annual budget review on page 198, on there, we allocated $917,000 that were transferred from the recycled water expansion project, and on addition, another $250,000 to the wastewater fund for the scatter permit proposed to the water fund. I believe shifting these funds are only treating the symptoms of the result of poor financial decision, rather than these problems must be treated with a healthy, balanced budget by implementing the maintenance management system. And lastly, lastly, I'd like to say there's a huge pile of water pipes just sunbathing on that wastewater property. They can see while you're walking along the Bay Trail. These pipes are probably starting to have been sitting, or at least sunbathing, for quite some years, and they're just disintegrating. So I'm just hoping that this is not what's also leading to our financial decision. I mean, I don't know if you guys seen them sunbathing out down at the Bay Trail. So I don't know. That's just my thoughts here, and I really hope we could use this time of turbulence where we want to increase the rates to be innovative and be mindful of the community, because inflation is high and the rates keep going up and we're not moving quite the same. So I'm really hoping we can allow innovation to look out for the community and all the families here that might be affected by this rate study hike and the increase of water. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Devet Mohammed.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, City staff, and the members of the public. My name is Devet Mohammed, and I am a resident of the City of American Canyon. I understand that raising rates is never an easy decision, but it is necessary to ensure that our city's utilities are properly funded and maintained for the future. As a member of the Utility Rate Advisory Committee, I can assure you that the proposed rate increase is based on careful analysis of the city's operations, capital, and other specific needs for our future. I know that as a citizen of the city of American Canyon and a ratepayer myself, the increase may seem burdensome, especially in a tough economic climate. But it is important to remember that these funds are crucial for funding capital projects, maintaining reserves, and keeping up with inflation and growth projections, as Mr. Hawley just explained. When comparing our current rates to neighboring cities, it is clear that we are still in line with what is being charged elsewhere. And with a thorough cash flow analysis by our city staff and NBS, for the next 5 years, we can ensure that the rate increase is necessary for the continued operation and improvement of our utilities. I urge you to consider these factors when making your decision on the rate increase. As someone who cares deeply about our community, I believe that investing in our city's infrastructure is crucial for the well-being of all residents for many years to come. From the words in the State of the City of American Canyon is a great place to live, work, and play. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Next speaker, please.
David Murphy.
Good evening to everybody. I've lived in American Canyon.
Can we get the mic a little closer to you there?
Oh, pointed at me. That helpful? Thank you. Got it. Yeah, I got the drift.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. I've lived in American Canyon since 1987, and the place has grown a substantial amount. Our big problem, it seems to me, is the infrastructure that was here prior to the time I moved in, and the new housing developments that have come in since that time, which I live in one.
Sir, we need to get you recorded, so if you speak into the microphone, please.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Well, in any event, things happen, everything gets old, gets reused. Our problem right now has to do with just, as to the water problem, is just getting the water. Our problem is we don't own, there's no reservoirs, dams, nothing, and so the cost, and so that's a fixed cost, in which basically is, at the present time, not controllable. All the other items having to do with replacing installation or the replacement of pipes and things like that is the, so I would think that our main deal is to find out, especially if we have common equipment with other cities, they're all going through the same things we do in one stage or another as to the equipment necessary, see if you can cut a deal. You know, it's like buying cars. You know, your local car dealer can give you a good bargain if he's selling a whole lot more cars. Same thing with buying of stuff you need. Get a commonality in there. My other question has to do, a comment, as the difference of how the, not so much the water rate, but the wastewater rate. You know, flush your toilet, fine. How come there's a big difference between the amount of water going into your house and what's going out as wastewater? The difference in the price. The other problem I have, and this just came to my mind, with the recycled water. If you take a look at a lot of the homes in American Canyon, especially those who moved in the 80s, early 90s, you got big lots. With these big lots, you know, you can go crazy. Better Homes and Gardens will be right out there taking pictures of your wonderful area. You'll be a real star. So the deal is, there could be a way for having, say, the city purchase a large tanker truck, pump on it, a lot of hose, do the front yard once. You worry about using your own water that you're paying for yourself.
Thank you very much for your comment.
Thank you very much.
Richard Schramm.
Good evening, Council. I'll try to make this brief. I know we got to increase and upgrade our systems. I supported it. I've been here for 45 years. I supported it when we first started out. I supported the plants when the sewer plant when it went in. I backed that up. The water line you talked about, backed that up. All this stuff, but it's getting to the point I'm getting tired of everything coming off of all this old people's back. We're paying more and more. And you're talking increases here over the next 5 years. Water rate, just the flat first rate, first tier is a 20% increase over the next 5 years. Sewer rates an 86% increase over the next 5 years. And then you got this meter rate, that's a 50% increase over the next 5 years. I got a 3% raise on my retirement. Half of that went back to taxes. I got a $7 a month raise. How the hell am I going to make ends meet? All you're doing is forcing all these old people out. Retired fixed incomes. I got a good retirement. I had a good retirement. When I retired, I was in middle income. Now I'm considered low income. So the problem is, it's not, I know we need the changes, but somewhere either triple up or the prices on the new developments and all that's going in, but you're going to have to get it. I'm tired of coming off our backs. So, not that I'm against it, but I'm sure in hell getting tired of paying for it. So, I mean, even your employees, all your workers, your water operators are getting a 10% in the next they get a 10% raise every year. Your water distribution wages, they get a 6% raise every year. Sewer wages, they get 5%. So what the hell? I'm still only getting 3%. So I'm sorry. I know we need it, but I can't afford it. Thank you.
And we're all on our way to that. We're all on our way trying to retire. We're never going to retire.
Sharon Robinson.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. I'm not sure how I follow that. I'm not really good at public speaking, but my mother said I'm very opinionated, so I'll just give you my opinion. In 2 days, I'll be 61, which means I'll have lived in American Canyon 61 years. First part of it was out on Greenland Road. I've seen a lot of growth. That's an understatement, obviously. 61 years, Fran, been here longer. And as to the speaker before, improvements need to be made, I understand. When your furnace breaks down, you have to buy a new one. And unfortunately, the furnace of today is not the same cost and quality of 30 years ago. So I understand the infrastructure things. And for people such as myself who are on a fixed income, who have been here for so long, maybe unlike a lot of people who have moved into the community as it's grown, can afford the 5-6 bedroom homes, the $2,500 a month rent in these newer buildings, or even the commercial. They can afford it. Like the gentleman before, my check every month is X amount of dollars. There's no wiggle room, you know, and everybody wants their cut. And it's not the city's job to take care of my finances or help me figure out how to do it, but I would just like for you to consider there are a lot of low income, and I mean below income people still here in American Canyon. And it's becoming tougher and tougher. Again, I know it has to be done. It's going to be done, so I feel like I'm just venting at this point. The city is going to do what it needs to do to keep the city running. I would just like to say that to some of us, I'm speaking for myself, I feel like some of the growth is unabated and just, it's happening so fast. It makes your head spin. The high density homes, and don't get me started because this is a conversation about the utility rates. Let's not talk about the highway and how we improve the lives of us who just have to navigate this little tiny highway that neither Caltrans nor Napa County Board of Supervisors seems to want to invest in. But in any case, I hope you'll consider that. And thank you. I wasn't aware that on the CARE program, maybe that could be better advertised. Maybe that could be a flyer sent out. Maybe there are a lot of other people like myself who, until just a little bit ago, wasn't aware. I am a member. I have CARE, so I will be bringing mine. But I appreciate your time. I love this city. Our city is very responsive. Our public works is awesome. Our police department is beyond awesome. They always want to come through American Canyon, and we always get them, or you always get them. Thank you. In any case, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Al Donaldson.
I want to make sure your comments are captured, so if you can speak in the mic too.
I'll give it a shot.
Thank you.
Thanks. Hi, Al Donaldson. Good evening, Mayor, Council, City Manager. Pretty much most of the people have covered what I was going to cover, so I'll just summarize some of it. Number one, I do not want to pay the cost of any new development, any cost that creates. Sewer lines needs replaced. I know you said that they pay their share and if it requires an upgrade. I've never seen any. Maybe you've got an example of that. Secondly, water, recycled water, there's a limit to that. The recycled water program that was well handled worked well for a lot of us that wanted the pipeline run to our front yards. But then it got to the point to where there's not enough recycled water, you found enough uses for it, the toilets in the new apartments, the highway. At some point, you're not going to have recycled water in the capacity you need for all the needs you're creating. So that's got an end point. People need to control their costs. You need to cover the cost. When we built the state-of-the-art reclamation project, that was supposed to be good for a build-out to a certain capacity. I think we've exceeded that in population. I worry about the new hotels we build. We've got a hotel going in that's 4 stories. I believe we had a moratorium that said you couldn't go any more than 2 stories. But they came along and said it's not financially feasible to build this hotel at 2 stories. So they get a variance. Why have these things if you're going to get variances all the time? The developers. You can't keep changing things. A couple of other minor things that I noticed. There's a lot of information out there. I couldn't read it all and understand it all in the time frame we had available. A couple of questions on what I read. There was costs in there related to fire protection related costs. There's numbers in there for that. I have no idea what that is. I thought when we paid the property taxes for fire department, all the costs associated with fire protection were covered. Another one I saw was drought rates. This one really caught my attention. Drought rates come in and use less, pay more, is what that's going to amount to. If you use less water and comply with a 10% reduction, you pay more money. And that's obvious. You've got a base of monies coming in. If you're getting less of them, you still got the same costs, operating costs. But I've never seen us offer anything for people that normally wisely use their water and conserve. And if they're way below, like I think you said the number was 7 units, I do 2 units, let's say. Nobody ever comes along and says, we're going to give you a cut in your rates because you're way below what everyone else is using. You're doing a good job. So I don't see that stuff. And one last thing. I think I've had it explained to me before, but I never can understand that when I look at my bill.
Sir, you're at time.
Yeah, if you
It
could
says in my bill-
summarize, please, yeah.
One last thing, a meter charge. What is the meter charge? What am I paying for and what is that money covering? It's not my water, it's not my sewer, it's a fixed meter charge. I don't need a meter, you need a meter to charge me.
Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comment.
Hugh Marquez.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm here as one of the American Canyon citizens that was on the Utility Advisory Commission. First, I want to thank the city for having American Canyon citizens in the process of our rate, in the process of our rates for our water, sewer, and recycled water. The city and the Utility Advisory Committee have been working on this result presented for about a year, and during the time residents have had numerous meetings in order to get to this point. In the beginning, we had Felix Hernandez, our maintenance director. With NBS, they started out the process. Felix eventually moved on, and we got Juan Gomez, our finance director, who was very helpful in getting the numbers that we needed to get the proper rate structures that we were looking for. Him with Jason Hawley, they helped in that process. During this process, we were informed that through Prop 218, the utility rate charges cannot go anywhere but for the utility being charged for. You cannot use extra funds for other departments or put money away as extra for another time. So through this process, the committee asked for numbers on what the cost for maintaining, in some cases improving our utilities would be. We also looked at neighboring cities to compare what we are paying for our utilities and to compare what the increase would look like for our residents, and in many cases found that our increase put us in the middle of many neighboring cities, and in many cases our residents pay much more cheaper rates. We found out that the recycled water is now being used as a water conservation tool in many new buildings, and is being used as the water in toilets and for plant irrigation. So that called for a rate for recycled water, as there is maintenance issues for producing recycled water. As I have said before, I do hope the city will look into getting a water truck for delivery, and it could be used as an adjunct as a water shuttle for our American Canyon Fire Department if ever needed. While we didn't want to raise rates, we believe that our residents want high quality water and a high quality sewer system, and we have to pay for it. And I've said there is no profit to be made on these utilities. We as a rate advisory committee looked at what we thought was a fair increase, while we would have liked to have not raised rates again. If we want quality utilities, we must pay for them. And as we have heard, the rates will be going down in some instances. The only last thing I would like to bring up is I talked to a few people about the rate structure, and many people were concerned about what line is a residential rate. There were numerous numbers, and I thought it was 1 inch, but I looked at mine and it was 2 inches. So I remember hearing 1 inch, but I wanted to make sure that that gets brought out, that a average residential utility meter is a 1 inch line. So that way you know what they would know. Thank you.
Ken Leary. I have no more speaker cards.
Okay. Anybody from the public wishing to speak? Please identify yourself, ma'am. 3 minutes.
Karen Fritz, resident, American Canyon. In regards to the water rate increase, I don't think the water increase itself is awful. It is, in fact, pretty bad for the sewer and the meter charge. Now, one of the things that is kind of confusing here is we have all this residential construction going on, all that development. You have hotels coming in with 200 rooms projected in the one that's not even built yet. That doesn't count the new one that's almost there on 29. And then you have all the businesses that are coming in. Now, why is it our sewer rates have to be so excessive when all these other developments are coming into play, and you get paid a sewer charge for every hotel room and every apartment building and every unit in that building? So I'm just kind of curious as to why we have to have such an exorbitant rate increase when these are all going to be coming online. And if I'm wrong for thinking that way, I would like someone to please explain that to me, because that is a lot of revenue that is projected to come in the very near future. And as you heard, there's several people here on extremely limited incomes. And yes, the CARE program it's okay, but when you don't get but 3% increase annually, and you're living paycheck to paycheck, pretty soon you're gonna be having to decide whether or not you're gonna have top ramen or just plain old rice for dinner. It is a tough situation for a lot of folks. Not everybody is in a six-figure salary or above. Perhaps there could be a moratorium on pay increases to help in the higher pay groups. I don't know. I know it takes a lot to do wastewater. I do understand that piece very well. And I do understand there's a lot to it. Again, I think Jason answered this a year or so ago for me, but isn't there a chemical group purchasing thing for treating wastewater? And are we part of that? Okay, so that helps on that note. But again, I don't understand with all the new development why we have to have such an absorbent sewer increase and a meter increase, really? Thank you.
Anybody else from the public and in attendance wishing to comment, please come to the podium. Sir, if you could identify yourself for the record, please.
Oh, I am Cap Prasad, resident here in American Canyon.
Thank you.
I have a question for Jason. I want to know, but before I start questioning, I would like to thank you for your presentation. However, based on the comments that had been made by the general public today, I feel that there are a lot of people who will be suffering, and I recommend that we should look at the individual budgets, what Jason has allocated for each, and if in the next 5 years, are we going in a surplus or a deficit on each of the utilities that you are proposing to increase. If that is the case, then we should allocate some of the funds and pass it, if you are going into revenue, then pass it, that revenue, to the people who are in need of help. Thank you.
Anybody else from the public wishing to comment? Do we have anyone online?
We have no hands raised online.
Very good. Well, seeing no other speakers, then we will close public comment at this time. Return to council for further discussion and desired action. Vice Mayor Oro?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, public, for your comments. I was just taking some notes, and I wanted to go over to address some of the comments that were made and some of these open questions. And Mr. Hawley, if you could help me out here, and let's try to address those before we have further deliberation and comments from the council. One speaker, Mr. Donaldson, came up and talked about fire protection fees. Can you talk a little bit about that and why that's in there?
Yeah, quickly, this doesn't apply to residential customers who aren't separately metered, but some of our larger customers actually have a separate service. It's often a big service, 6, 8, 12 inches. It's never on, except when it needs to be on. In the case of a fire, putting out the sprinklers. So we have, there is a cost to having that meter out there. It goes functionally obsolete, et cetera. And it never gets utilized again unless there's a fire, and then there is the volume of water that goes through that service. So that's what it's not for the fire district, it's not for the firefighters, there's nothing to do with that, other than to say those businesses, have the benefit of fire sprinklers, for example, that helps the firefighters out, if they're responding. But that money does not go to the fire district. It has to do with the plumbing that's in the street, that particular fire service.
It's not a residential charge.
I can't think of a residence that has a separate fire meter. You'd have to have a pretty large house to.
Yeah, and then this is the other one was on drought rates, and this was a conundrum that we had talked about previously. And truth be told, I haven't solved the riddle yet on that, because I think during the severe drought in 2017, 2019, people were using less water, meaning we were getting less income for water operations, yet the water operations are fixed whether you use the water or not, and putting us in a deficit. Talk to us a little bit about how that's addressed and how we should be thinking about that.
Sure, it is the sort of conundrum of we do have fixed costs regardless of how much water is used, and it's kind of a contravening sort of aspect. But I think the top of page 51 in the packet probably tells the best story, particularly for those customers who are already doing a good job of conserving water. If you're in Tier 1, if you're a household using less than 6 units a month, you're not going to be subject to the drought rates. It is for our customers, or our larger customers, and our Tier 2 residential customers. So if you're in a fixed income, if you have 2 people in the household and using 2, 3, 4 units, we're still going to ask you to conserve a little bit. We're going to ask everyone to pitch in, but the rates themselves won't be imposed on those customers in Tier 1. So I think that's a great clarification. And the other thing I'd add to that is, I may tell the council we have a drought emergency, but it actually is a council action that's required to implement a drought emergency, and that's done on a very scientific basis based on water availability and projections and so forth. That's a separate public meeting that the council would have if we have to, and the council continues to have to be involved in that drought emergency should the situation arise. So just because what we've done here is specify what the rate would be in the case of that emergency. It is also possible, and we did this, back to actually 3 years ago, we had the ability at that time to implement charges. They weren't specified in this table, but we had the ability to implement 1x, 2x, 3x charges on folks. And we actually advocated to the council not to do that yet. We felt like our volunteer requesting of residents was having the intended effect. This is an example that's meant to be somewhat punitive, and we do have the justification for those additional costs because we're going to be having to purchase water, for example. It's more expected, so that's where that number comes from. But it's meant to be a sort of stopgap. So if some folks are like, don't care, I have tons of money, I want to keep watering, this is meant to say, well, that's not the point. We need your compliance with this emergency.
So in a sense, if you are conserving, you are being rewarded for not being punitively damaged for using a lot of water.
Correct. Everyone in Tier 1, less than 6 units a month, would not have that.
That speaker also talked about a meter charge and questioning why we have a meter charge.
Yeah, generally, again, thinking about the meter charges is kind of like your mortgage, right? It doesn't matter. We have expenses, and so the accumulation of those meter charges is that fixed revenue that we can rely upon to pay our bills that have nothing to do with whether we serve 100 acre feet or 0 acre feet. So we have debt service, for example, on our state water project. We participate in the state water project. We have debt service from the 1960s, and we'll continue to have debt service on those pipelines and things that were built. And that doesn't matter how much water we put through the pipeline. So there's an example of a fixed bill we have back from when it was a water district. And so it's just one example. But variable costs like chemical treatment or some of our maintenance obligations, those kind of things are more for our variable rates.
Is it fair to think of the meter charge as just a baseline for where we are able to operate? But it's not all of it.
Yeah, it's not all, but we know we're going to sell some water, so it isn't 100% of those costs. It's a blended aspect, but it is meant to represent the amount of money we need to know coming into this fund for us to undertake our activities. We know we're going to sell some water. We don't know exactly how much water we're going to sell, but we need to be able to count on some water to pay our mortgage on the state water project. We have staff. Staff is essentially a fixed cost because for our treatment operations staff, and we have a very, very lean treatment operations and distribution crew, lean as in numbers. They're very skilled and great at what they do. They get paid whether we deliver 2,000 acre feet of water or 1,900 acre feet of water or 1,000, because they still have to be out in the system. They have to be testing for water quality. They have to be doing all of their thing. Their labor costs are not related to how much water we deliver.
Yeah, and then on the next speaker, that talked, Ms. Fritz talked about development fees and where those were going. Can you kind of clarify who's paying for what and how they're paying for it? I know you talked about it earlier, but if we could just kind of restate that in a way.
Yeah, I have a great example that's coming to mind, a project that's currently in design, either later this summer, perhaps the first part of 25. There's a sewer line along the west side of Highway 29. We upgraded some of it in front of the PG&E lot several years ago. The next segment heading north, badly deteriorated, decades old, was installed when some of the original subdivisions in Rancho were built. Watson Ranch project and other development fees have been collected to make improvements to that pipeline. And so that project is known as our SS4 project because we're not very good with, with naming. That project is entirely funded with our sewer capacity fees. So this is developer fees from all different development projects that we've collected over time, and we're increasing the capacity of that pipe, but it has a double benefit. That pipe is badly deteriorated and arguably should be replaced today with ratepayer funds. Because it's deteriorated, it's matched its life cycle. But we've been able to match a new project, a new development project that needs a slightly larger pipe. So what's out there today is, say, 8 inches. What needs to be in the future is 10 or 12 inches. We're putting back a 12, but that's 100% developer fee paid for, and it's not coming out of rates. And so the rate increases in the sewer fund are not paying for that project, although you could make a very strong argument. In fact, if we had a moratorium on new development, replacing that pipeline would have to happen. It would have to come from rates, but it's not. It's coming from developer fees. So that's one example. There are others. The sewer main in Rancho Del Mar was paid for by the developer of the Walmart project, and that fixed that 60-year-old pipeline probably at the time, a little bit not quite as old. So.
And is it staff's culture to try to find ways to do that to keep it away from individual ratepayers?
Very much. That's the call it a hierarchy or a priority where we can overlay a need for a development project and happen to overlay it with a capital need for an existing deficiency, and we can magically make those things work. Then yeah, that's our first choice for those funding. There are sometimes we can't. There are sometimes that it is purely just a maintenance cost, like the neighborhoods, for example, in Rancho, we're going to be working on improving the collection system and some water mains there. I can't attribute that necessarily to developers. So
yeah.
we do our best when we can be really creative with that, but it doesn't always pan out.
Yeah, and tonight we're hearing from the general public, but I'd like to let the general public know that I also hear it from developers saying that our infrastructure rates are too high. Right, and so they're complaining that, and then I'm fine, and I'm here for the voters, so it's a balance here, and we hear it on both sides, but I think it's looking out best for the city of American Canyon, and what needs to be done, and then finally, just the first speaker talked about meetings behind closed doors, pretty serious accusation, and I'm wondering when did we discuss this behind closed doors?
We'll go kind of back from the beginning. I believe it was November of 22, well, leading up to November of 22, we advertised citywide for anyone in American Canyon, resident or business owner, to participate in our utility rate advisory committee. We accepted all of the applications of any interested residents and businesses. We actually patterned this off a committee we had when we did the water rates back in 2017. And back in 2017, we had about 20 people who volunteered, and we were going to select just a couple, and we decided we'll just take all 20 of them, and we'll have a bigger committee, and we did the same thing here. So anyone who showed interest was able to participate. The meetings were held in that conference room, and they were held in this building. They weren't, we didn't broadcast them on YouTube, and we didn't go through the expense of doing all that, because again, these were kind of workshop meetings. They weren't formal meetings like this. They were workshops. So we did have presentations and such. The behind closed doors, I know that sometimes is meant to have a negative connotation. Committee members were invited, staff was invited, anyone in the community who wanted to participate was invited. This wasn't, some secret meeting or anything like that.
The public was allowed to attend those meetings.
We didn't have anyone interested other than the committee members, who wanted to be on it. Everyone, at the time in 2022 who was interested in this issue, who raised their hand and said, yeah, I'm interested, they were all invited to participate, and we had great participation from that group. We didn't go through the effort of, agendizing them in Brown Act and publishing all those meeting announcements on our website, because this was a working committee. This wasn't a formal Brown Act meeting.
Was there any effort at all to try to conceal or hide anything from the public with regards to water rates?
No.
Yeah. And I could say that from the council, too. This is done in open session. Careful with those accusations. Thank you.
Okay, other comments from council?
No, sir. No.
Councilmember Joseph?
I wanted to clarify some of the comments that were made too. Referring to the same speaker, he talked about having maintenance management systems, records. And if I can reply to that, I think it is something that staff has been looking at. I know Felix, our prior maintenance utility director, was certainly advocating that we have a computerized maintenance management system. And so I certainly think that's an important thing to look into. You know, it will come when its time is, and it won't be cheap either. The other comment he had, and just because I've been here for so long, I had to answer, and I think he's left, the old pipelines out at the wastewater treatment plant. The history of that is those were pipes that were used temporarily when we were in the process of building our own wastewater plant and getting out from under Napa Sanitation. And they were used temporarily, literally, they were the sewer line that we put on top of the existing utility easement. And when we were done and made the switch over, we disassembled them and stackpiled them there. So yes, they have been out in the sun for 25 years, and probably at some point they ought to be put away. But trust me, the cost of that has been amortized over years. So little piece of useless history. The other comment that I think bears some consideration is Karen Fritz talking about, with all these new sewer customers, shouldn't that have some benefit? And I can't help but say, to the same extent that all of our new customers are having a moderating effect on our water variable rate, the same certainly could apply to sewer. We, you know, to be honest with you, we hadn't updated our sewer rates since 2007, so I was more inclined to think that there's going to be a bigger jump. But it's still a good point. And one of the things that the consultant in the study talked about, which I think is great, is that we do an annual report to basically compare and contrast. We are projecting a certain amount of water to be sold, projecting a certain number of customers, certain operating costs, and so on. Every year we need to have an annual report that says we thought we'd have this, and basically compare a budget to actual as it relates to water consumption, customers, expenses. And then a caveat to the expense ought to be analyzing whether there are ways to improve the efficiency of our operations. A case in point, we've been promoting, and I appreciate it, this idea of signing up for auto bill and auto pay. So basically, you get plugged in. We don't have to do a lot of trouble. The computer will email you your bill. Then the computer will email back your payment. And the labor component is significantly reduced. I'd like to see us look at that to say, is there a way that we can incentivize it to the customer and say, look, if you sign up for this, you're saving us some money, so we'll take something off of that fixed rate, that meter rate, because if you're saving us money, we'll pass it back to you. So those are the kinds of things, as well as whatever a maintenance management system might tell us in terms of how we devote our time. So the point being that we need to be a little more sensitive to what we can do to save a few bucks here and there. I think our crews are very well qualified. They know how to run the system. But I think we're now getting to that point, and tonight's meeting is clear to me. We're getting to the point where the customer understands the need for the increases, but that doesn't mean they can afford it. And so that translates into an action plan for us to say we've also got to start looking at what we can do. Can we be clever? For example, it was our city manager, when he was wearing his public works hat, that negotiated, $1 million from Coca-Cola, which basically funded the replacement of that water line that in turn saved us 200 or 300 acre feet of land. So creativity is a key factor. Leveraging new development is a key factor. And then good old-fashioned, figuring out how to operate and do things cheaper and faster and better has to be part of it. And what I want to see is that we get that annual report that looks at all those things, including ways in which we can make things operate. If if you look at these rate increases as maximums, then from there, the goal is to say, how much can we not increase and still keep everything running correctly? That has to be our commitment to the customer, acknowledging that, yes, we need to keep our systems in good shape. We have to recognize, basically how much can you afford, and how do we mitigate those two extremes? And that's what I think we need to commit to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well said.
I think we've had a lot of good comment this evening. Questions that we've had a response from the council members here, questions from the audience. Trying to think, Mr. Hawley, some way of putting that together, an information piece for the community, through our public information officer. Kind of summarizing that as, because I'm sure there's more people who have similar questions than that out there. And so just making it available, say, vis-a-vis our webpage, something like that. It was a great way to connect with what's going on in American Canyon. And we're relatively new with that process, but we get better all the time. It's just something like if you have an interest in communicating concerns about it, then maybe there's a way of getting that information out so they understand. A lot of good information tonight. I appreciate the concerns as well. Well shared by so many people. But also there's good information coming forward in terms of how to resolve this and make it more efficient. Councilmember Washington.
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback on what you just said. I gotta contribute the communication that you put forth, because I'm pleasantly surprised at how this meeting ended up tonight. I was terrified coming in here tonight, thinking that what am I going to expect? But I gotta say that Jen and the communication, Mr. Hawley with the communication, what I've heard tonight was people understand. It just hurts, So, but the key is we are communicating, and I like the response. I've seen people here that I've known that I like, man, they're going to give it to us tonight, and that's not the case. And I got to contribute you, Mr. Hawley, and your team, your staff, for going over and beyond, in my opinion, to go out and communicate to the city of why we're doing what we're doing in every way that we want it. We've talked about that in the past where, hey, look, our communication is not so well. I think this is a win in a lot of different ways. And I think we have a lot to work on. I understand the fixed incomes of a lot of our residents out there. And I think we'll put our heads together and we'll figure out ways to try to help those residents out. But I just got to say, I'm pleasantly surprised that I'm not beat up right now. Thank you.
The night's not over yet.
I digressed a bit. Hang on a second. We got it. Oh, Vice Mayor Oro.
Yeah, I just want to add a little bit to Councilmember Washington's thought, and the thought of it just hurts. This isn't the best economic environment. I was talking to some friends recently, particularly of my age and my generation. I'm 51, if you guys want to ask, and we lived through the 90s as growing up as teenagers, and it was all good. China came in and started manufacturing. We lost some jobs in the United States, but everything went cheap, and everything was low prices, and everything was low interest rates. I was a kid not knowing about economics in the late 70s, and when oil gas prices in the last big inflationary period happened. And now I'm experiencing it, and my parents experienced it before, and I think those older than me experienced it before. And it just sucks. Everything sucks right now in terms of going out to eat. I mean, Burger King costing me $25 is nuts. Going to places that used to be the $5 burrito was great. Now it's a $15 burrito. And then understanding and knowing that, hey, this is going to go up to my water, it just sucks. But as a council member, and I think as a staff and as a city here, we have a responsibility to just be at a level that keeps us operating. And the thing in here that happens is that we can't make a profit of it. And this is not a greedy thing that we're trying to do. This is something that we have to do to maintain it. And, there's programs here to help those on fixed incomes, and I know it's probably going to help a little bit or maybe not at all, and it just sucks. But I think just to understand that and hear everybody's voices and understand that where we are in this sort of economic time frame, it just sucks. So I wanted to know and let you guys know, and I want to acknowledge that, but we do have at least I do as a council member, have a responsibility to make sure that we are fiscally sound and that we are providing the services and infrastructure that can keep us going for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Council. Just want to reflect everybody back on the last time we did this. To Councilmember Washington's comments, to Vice Mayor Oro, to Councilmember Joseph's comments. We hadn't addressed the water rate effectively from an economic point of view for years and years and years. As a matter of fact, the city was subsidizing it to the tune of about $1 million a year just to keep it low, because the terror of addressing an angry mob on water rates is pretty threatening to a lot of people. I said, you know what, let's get real about it. This is something we all have to purchase, yes, and it's right. It has an economic impact on our budget, our household expenditures. On the other hand, there's ways of addressing this so that we can provide for folks who are economically challenged. Okay, that's a fair thing to do. That's right and just in my view. But we also ought to people ought to be aware of water conservation. How many of you of us have the water portal? That little QR code? Yeah. I've run into people thought, wow, we got a leak in the house. Yeah, I had one too. It dropped significantly when I finally tracked it down. One of those plungers in the toilet that kid moved out, off to college and didn't use that anymore. All right, it's leaking. That chopped us way back. So if we do our own maintenance on it, we can conserve some as well. So we all own a piece of this. It's not all passive type of thing. With that said, Mr. Hawley, next step for us is we need to review numbers of protest letters we have. Oh, public information, explain that going forward. How's this work? The 218.
Public information going forward?
Yeah, 218 hearing requires
sure. So
action if we have a certain number?
Yes. Actually, I'm going to let Teresa kind of explain this next part.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. So there are 4,863 property owners. If 2,432 written protests are received, then the council may not act on this item. Prior to this meeting, we received 205 written protests. We have a small handful that we received since we've been in here. So it's probably like less than 10. So we have not reached that threshold, and council may take action on this item if they choose to.
Thank you. And I would, how many times did we notify the community? And what method did we use? Excuse me, sir.
Mayor, we sent out approximately 10,000 Prop 218 notices, which are the these 4-page, two-sided documents. We also sent out one of these notices to every address in American Canyon, including apartments and mobile home addresses. As far as our electronic communications, those went out through a variety of emails and messages to the community. It's difficult to know how many of them went out, but several of our communications on a biweekly basis went out. And
okay, and certainly there was, I'm assuming there's a place to you where you can call if you have questions?
Correct.
All right, very good. Okay. So it sounds to me like we have done our obligation there in terms of public notification.
Correct.
And this evening, we've had provided that opportunity for public participation in this part as well. So thank you all. So with this, that we can establish the fact that we can move forward with this ordinance. Any further conversation for council, or I'll accept a motion for the ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, if there are no other comments, I'll make a motion that we waive first reading and adopt by title only an ordinance of the City Council of the City of American Canyon amending City of American Canyon Municipal Code, Chapter 1306, Water Rates and Connection Fees, Chapter 13.14, Water Conservation Plan, and Chapter 1404, Wastewater Rates and Charges to establish new potable water, recycled water, and wastewater property related fees and charges.
I'll second.
Motion second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Joseph?
Yes.
Councilmember Washington?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Oro?
Yes.
Mayor Garcia?
Yes. Thank you, council.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make another minute order or motion that we also follow up with an annual report that compares projected water consumption, wastewater consumption, and customers and so forth, basically comparing what's been forecast to what actually occurred, as well as to provide any insights in ways to reduce costs and keep our rates low.
That's a request, not a formal.
No, that I'm making a motion that we in effect follow up on the consultant's recommendation to review this annually.
It's not part of the packet, is what I'm saying.
No.
Correct. Okay, I'll second that.
Thank you.
Motion second. Roll call, please. Oh, but this would be something we'd have to formally bring back? No.
No, Mayor.
Okay.
Sorry, turn on my microphone. No, it's this is essentially a follow-up action item,
Okay.
and
All right.
you know,
Very good.
it could be at the end of this meeting where we talk about future agenda items, or it dovetails nicely with this. So it's the same sort of procedure
Very good.
for adding something to my to-do list and on staff's to-do list.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Joseph?
Yes.
Councilmember Washington?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Oro?
Yes.
Mayor Garcia?
Yes. Thank you, council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Okay, moving on then with our business item number 11, the new environmental sustainability goal.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'll also be handling this item tonight. Don't have a presentation for you, but
We'll give excuse me, sorry for the interruption. Why don't we give a minute or two for the
certainly, Mayor.
room to clear? If those who want to continue, we'll stay. Okay, let's proceed.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This next item tonight relates to the topic of environmental sustainability and the establishment of a new goal and various strategies related to environmental sustainability. To understand why this is important, and how it fits within the framework of what we do here in American Canyon, requires we go back in time a little bit to about a decade ago when when the City Council led a visioning process with the community. It took place between 2012 and 2014 and involved more than 1,000 staff, or 1,000 resident and business inputs and committee meetings, and it was really a widespread effort. And I believe it's page 207 in your packet was kind of one of the foundational documents that was created from that process. I apologize, it kind of cut off, so 208, the following page really starts to tell the story, but there was the development of a vision, a mission and values on what American Canyon is and our trajectory and our vision of where we're going. At the time, there was also 7 goal areas that were established around public safety, community and sense of place, economic development and vitality, outdoors and recreation, transportation, infrastructure, and organizational effectiveness. And these goal areas and the various strategies underneath them really guide our work today. Every one of our staff reports that we bring to council identifies these particular goal areas and how we're trying to address those items. One of the things that we have found, though, that is missing is around the topic of environmental sustainability. Back at that time, that wasn't such a hot topic in the community, but now we think it is. We did have one strategy that related to environmental sustainability, but in the grand scheme of things, it was one out of 30-something strategies and wasn't as of importance as it probably now is. We met with the council in 2023 and really talked about the community vision, and we talked about the goal areas, we talked about the trajectory that American Canyon had been on. In 2012, American Canyon was 20 years old, and so it was a process for the first time of checking in with itself, and the consensus was generally the community liked what had happened in the prior 2 decades and wanted more of the same. There wasn't a reaction or a wanting to change of paths. It was wanting to continue to fulfill the promise that had been established back in 1992. And so, last year when we were talking with the council about this, we kind of reconfirmed that trajectory. We felt that the community was in still the same place. We liked who we are, what we become, and we wanted more of the same. But one of the aspects we began talking about with the council was this discussion around environmental sustainability. That wasn't part of the mindset necessarily in 1992 and really wasn't a very big topic in 2012, 2014, but has become more so now. And so we began to look back and to try and look at some of the prior successes that we've had as it relates to environmental sustainability, and they're listed, some of them are listed on page 203 of your packet. But the bottom line is American Canyon over that time period has become known statewide as a leader in environmental sustainability, particularly in the areas of land use and housing, water conservation, and recycled water. We're leading the charge in those areas, and we're known statewide for doing that. Our greenhouse gas emissions in 2002 were estimated to be about 13% less than the statewide average and about 39% less than the national average. So again, doing better than average and leading in some specific areas. All of that without a specific goal related to environmental sustainability, and so we felt like maybe we needed to reconcile that. We have some other successes. They're listed, like I mentioned, on page 203. Our Energy Efficiency Climate Action Plan kind of kicked things off in 2012. We won an award in 2016 from the Institute of Local Government. California Water Reuse, which is a water recycling association, noticed our water recycling efforts. We received a statewide award. Implementing the California Green Building Code. We've implemented a gas station moratorium, which is one of the first in all of California. Actually, I think the second in California behind Petaluma. And our participation in the Countywide Climate Action Committee in establishing greenhouse gas emissions. And our city attorney mentioned to me earlier, we forgot some milestones, and he's going to have some suggestions in your resolution tonight. But just a couple of meetings ago, we adopted some very strict CEQA review standards for industrial projects as it relates to greenhouse gas thresholds, which, so far as we can tell, haven't been adopted by anybody in our area. So we continue to lead the charge in many respects. So when we met with the council in early February, we said, you know what, we should come back with an environmental sustainability goal. And we had proposed some language that said for this new goal, the language would be demonstrate leadership in environmental sustainability. So that would be the goal, what we're generally trying to achieve. And then we sought about trying to have some strategies for implementing that goal. We wanted to, before we come up with those strategies, we kind of talked about some what I was sort of characterizing as guiding principles. But for developing those strategies, there was a couple of topics. They're listed here on page 203. But we wanted to focus on city operations first. We realized that many of the changes we're talking about for sustainability, might be difficult for folks. They might be unwilling to participate. We needed to do some looking in the mirror, if you will, and to make sure that city operations were focused on sustainability instead of just imposing it on others who may be unwilling to implement that. The second thing that we wanted to think about is in terms of resiliency. We have some vulnerable areas. Our western edge along the bay, potentially vulnerable to sea level rise. Our eastern edge and actually our Clark Ranch are vulnerable to impacts from climate change related to fire and windstorms and those sorts of things. So we wanted to have a strategy to kind of protect and make those more resilient. We talked about where our place should be in this discussion that's happening across the globe, really, and we wanted to be partnering with regional efforts, supporting regional efforts. We didn't want to be going first alone, off on our own journeys. We wanted to be supporting others, and we didn't want to be resisting the efforts that are underway. We wanted to be generally supporting what folks are doing, but not necessarily leading the charge on every issue. And that kind of dovetails with another strategy that we wanted to talk about, is that we want strategies that make sense for American Canyon. We may be doing things for our own purposes that aren't just what others want us to do. This arena is filled with a lot of people who have a lot of ideas. Many of them don't live in American Canyon, and they are frequently coming here telling us what to do, but they may not be the strategies that we want to implement. And we want to implement strategies that make sense for American Canyon. And the good example of that, I think, is the gas station moratorium, which we implemented not because we're trying to get rid of internal combustion engines. That wasn't our purpose. We felt like the aesthetics and the noise and the emissions related to those gas stations along our main street, along Highway 29, was something we had enough of and didn't want more. We didn't want a proliferation of 6, 7, 8, 10 gas stations and to become a gas station row. It wasn't necessarily we were trying to end the internal combustion engine, but it does have some positive impacts on the climate as we look to not have a proliferation of those gas stations. So there was a way of achieving one goal, but we did it for our reasons, not for the reasons others may have been advocating for. And lastly, we wanted to strike a balance between open space and areas that are going to be developed. We frequently are hearing folks advocate that any open space, no open space is proper for development, and we think there's a balance there. We think there are some spaces where development is appropriate, and we think there are others that should remain open space, and we wanted to strike a balance to that and recognize that there are both situations. So we tried to have strategies that implemented all of those guiding principles, and they're listed at the bottom of page 203. So the proposed 5 new strategies are: number 1, pursue net zero climate pollution for city operations. Number 2, fortify locations vulnerable to climate change. Number 3, collaborate with regional partners to reduce climate pollutants. And number 4, identify lands for new development while preserving other lands as open space. And number 5, educate the community to obtain buy-in for behavior change. I should have prefaced this whole conversation with, obviously all of this is subject to council approval, input, wordsmithing, change. There's no pride in authorship in any of this. So any of the ideas that you have or suggested changes you have, obviously would welcome them. Same thing with the public. If there are comments that the council feels would be good to input, we certainly can. So this was meant to be a starting place. We think our conversation from February was a well-informed starting place, but like I said, no pride of authorship there. The resolution on page 205, memorializes a council action to establish a goal in the 5 strategies. It will be part of our nomenclature and part of our landscape as we look at our decision making. And with that, happy to entertain any other questions, comments.
No, thank you for this. This is something I think as a city in our operations, we ought to present ourselves as a role model for that. So if we're going to reduce pollutants. Certainly, well, we were talking about public works earlier. The more we can go toward petroleum-based equipment, the better. I realize there's a cost associated with it. I don't mean that we do it all at once. It's something that moves forward in a plan with it. But yeah, I think we have a lot to offer in that. The way we engage community on it, is, in terms of, where's this other one here that really caught my attention? What do we look at in terms of beyond ourselves? See, we had a lot of issues come up with the big development on Green Island Road, and this is a natural habitat. If you look west of here, just over the riverbank at the San Pablo Bay wetlands, it's massive. It is hundreds of times larger than anything we have here, and they're all returning it all back to wetlands habitat. We have a connection, obviously, with that. You know, it's on our flyway, back and forth. The way we can work with other people to expand this knowledge base about, you know, a lifestyle where we enjoy life, but we do it in a way that, with consideration to what the impact of that is. You know, if you have access to open space, that becomes an incredible education opportunity and value for community. I just always go back to opening up of the wetlands here. You know, with a landfill, you couldn't get out there. But now that we're out there, well, everybody has an opportunity to enjoy that. It's healthy. You learn new things if you're open to that. But it's also people take ownership of it. Wow, this is our wetlands. We want to share it with people, you know. So you have organizations that definitely support that out there. Community and Parks Foundation being one of the big ones on it. And the fact that, you know, we have an ecology center going here in the old Corp Yard in American Canyon will only enhance that. So I think also at some level examining our own lifestyles. You know, what's our household contribution to sustainability? You know, how do we handle, well, what do we toss away? My street today, Tuesdays, is the day the garbage picks up everything. Yeah, how much are we composting? Because they give us those big green bins to do that. That was another thing to look at and to promote. Other comments from council?
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Mm-hmm.
I think Jason and I were discussing this before, and I would like to remind the council of its actions in early February in first reading and eventual adoption at your first and second meetings of the first implementation measures, not only in the county of Napa, but in the Bay Area, that actually established greenhouse gas first environmental assessment standards, and then formulated implementation measures for reviewing them in industrial commerce centers. At the time, you acknowledged how significant that is, and again, with no pride of authorship, it's respectfully suggested that there could be a recital that summarized those actions in February of this year, and perhaps another implementation goal to encourage that continual type of review and actual implementation of greenhouse gas or environmental sustainability standards. That's a very significant moment. Nobody else has done that. You noted at the time you were the environmental leader, not only in the county, but in the region in doing that. The only thing that even remotely is similar to what you did was a resolution that was enacted by the city of Sassoon, but not an actual ordinance standard where you set up a different environmental review process under CEQA and formulated a method where you can impose mitigation measures that implement sustainability provisions such as facilitating EV charging stations, methods of industrial commerce transfer, and so forth. So I would encourage, consideration of modification of the resolution to both note that as a recital and consider it as an implementation measure.
Very good thought, Mr. Ross. Very good thought. I think that was unique. And certainly shows what our capacity to do. Council want to add something to that effect?
Well, I appreciate the mentioning it because it is kind of puts us on top of the list as far as doing certain things. But I'm trying to look at the resolution and imagine how it would fit into the resolution.
I have a recommendation.
Okay, because the way I look at it is this is kind of reciting our goals and mission and so forth, and then adopting our new one and identifying the 5 strategies. So I'm wondering if it would constitute a 6th strategy, and if so, how would that be worded?
I think a recital something like the following: whereas American Canyon has implemented previously stated sustainability goals through the enactment of 2 greenhouse gas ordinances in February 2024:1, an ordinance adopting industrial use greenhouse gas standards of review, and 2, an ordinance implementing Industrial Commerce Center sustainability standards. That could be a recital section, something like that. Again, no pride of authorship. And then an additional goal, number 6, to continue review of further implementation of standards for environmental sustainability comparable to those taken by the city in February of 2024, and to encourage other local agencies within Napa County and the region to consider the adoption of substantive standards such as accomplished by the city. Something like that.
That would make sense. It becomes a 6th standard that references revising our review of standards and development standards and other standards. That makes sense. Okay.
Okay, other comment from council? Council ready for public comment?
Yes, sir.
Public comment on this matter is open.
Ken Leary.
Let me get my notes here. I got a lot of them. So good evening, Honorable Mayor and distinguished council members. My name is Kenneth Leary. I live here in American Canyon. I want to thank and commend the council for continually to make efforts to fight catastrophic climate adaptation. I look back at the things that we have done, and starting in 2012, and I said, my God, I was on council then.
Yes, you were.
And
you had part of that.
Right, and I remember our discussions, and we were sincerely wanting to do something about climate adaptation. That council, this council. I was at the League of California when we got the Beacon Awards, and I got that picture like with 5 or 6 awards we won. But I'm here to say, I'm glad that you're continuing, that you're looking towards the future. And City Attorney just mentioned greenhouse gases and these things, and there's a lot of things in this report that are very, very important. But there are these secondary things that we often do not look at. Well, Mary, you did mention the open space Newell to the east and the wetlands to the west. But you know, the creation of the high school here in American Canyon impacted greenhouse gases. It took, students didn't have to go all the way up to North Napa to go to school and back, whether on a bus or their parents drove them. Mm-hmm. That was an impact. A wastewater treatment plant back in 2005-04 was the talk of the county and the Bay Area. That filtration system that we had was the envy of everyone. We have been leaders and on the forefront of so many places here that it's amazing that such a small town is willing to take these things on. Lastly, if I have one more point, can I make it, please?
You got a minute?
Okay. American Canyon is a relatively small town, but we have high density. We didn't build up. If you ever run for office and you gotta walk this town, it is, I don't want to use that word, but it is hard because we are so dense.
You can wrap it up, please.
Right. So I want to thank you, and I want to thank you for your continued efforts to do so. I've been a champion, and I will be here to help us champion, and so thank you very much. I like number 3 because I like them all, but number 3, regional, is very, very important. We got to get other folks on the pages. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker.
Clarence Memorel.
Good evening. First thing I wanted to note is, my goodness, I wish the folks that were here earlier had stayed, because the multiple environmental sustainability strategies is so encouraging, and that's good news for us. And I think I said it before, you know, we are stewards of this city. We're just keeping the chairs warm for the next generation and the next generation after that. So, and I just want to put on my park commissioner hat, that, you know, we are so, you know, we have a lot to be thankful for. But also, you know, something to add is that the ratio of parks to our residents is above average here. And that as a member of the California State Parks Commission, you know, we have a statewide reputation of being creative problem solvers that punch above our weight. That's something that that's a phrase I hear from commissioners and park commissioners in other state, or I'm sorry, in other cities. So I'm just really proud of that. And something to consider, you're probably going to do this already, but this resolution, please share it enthusiastically with the other commissions and the other commissioners. This is something that affects us so broadly that we should actively thinking in our advice to council. We should have this kind of already baked in to our thinking. Thank you.
Thank you. Other speaker? Anybody else?
I have no other cards.
Okay. Anybody else from the audience? Wishes to comment?
Al Donaldson, American Canyon. I didn't read this, I didn't know this was on the agenda, but a couple of thoughts. In my working capacity, when I still worked, I was responsible for environmental air, water emissions. And one thing I always think about is it measurable? If you're going to do something, is it measurable? If it's measurable, how accurate is the measurement? If I get accurate measurements, what do I do with the results? I heard earlier good things that have happened, things that we've done, the wetlands, the new ranch, the high school, and the impact that had. But right away my mind went to how many Amazon trucks do I see every day? And the emissions coming out of them. So there's a lot of other things, and you have to be careful what you do because it opens you up to different challenges of other things that you don't control. And frankly, I mean, the traffic up and down here, I remember the Benicia Bridge when they were going to prove that stuck traffic was not a function of toll takers. So they gave free tolls one day. The problem became that everyone went to the 2 lanes that were open for paying by cash because they didn't want to go through the bridge and get fined for not paying. They never publicized that they were going to do this. So the backup became much worse. So emissions from vehicles going up and down 29, how many years have we been fixing that? We haven't, we can't, we won't. So my thing is, keep doing all these good things, but watch what's measurable, So you can say we did this and this was the result. And we didn't do that and stop that from happening. That's it.
Thanks for sharing this on. Anybody else in the audience? Anybody online?
There are no hands raised online.
Very good. And I will close public comment on it. We'll move back to council for further discussion, desired action. Councilmember Joseph.
Yes. Well, number one, I appreciate the resolution. And quite honestly, the original comments from our last retreat, I think you've done a good job of correcting it or making it better. So I appreciate that. I also, my personal favorite is number 4, which is basically recognizing some land can be developed, but some land needs to be preserved as open space. I think one of the themes we've heard a lot lately is that we're just building everywhere and there isn't any open space. And I think this goal or strategy specifically addresses that. And I, for one, will be an advocate of trying to make that a reality. It's going to involve a whole lot of work because it probably will involve lands that are in the county or that aren't in the city. But it is an important objective for myself, so I'm excited about that provision. I appreciate the city attorney's additional item about development standards, and I think that should be, included in the resolution. And then one last thing, I just had to comment on Mr. Donaldson's remarks. Number one, as part of the Climate Action Committee countywide, we're out trying to put together funding for what amounts to a 24/7 monitoring of greenhouse gases within the entire county. And if it's done the way they're selling it, we'll be able to identify just how many greenhouse gases we're emitting, how much is coming in, how much is coming out, and be able to target, within reason, what is American Canyon's actual emissions versus models and so on. So we are addressing that. We only need $6 million, so write me a check and we'll get you something. And then the second one is 29 has been a pain, but we are in the middle of getting Caltrans's attention. We've lined up the planning document. We're now embarking on an environmental review that will end up with an improvement on the 29 corridor, at least bikes and pedestrian underground power line, and probably roundabouts. I'm not convinced we need 6 of them, but 2 or 3 might come in handy and is supposed to facilitate the flow of traffic through town. So off topic, I guess, but we are doing what we can. Admittedly, we aren't doing it as fast as I'd like, but turns out nothing goes as fast as we like. And those are my comments.
Right. Thank you very much. Any other comment from council?
No,
We have
sir.
a resolution, action item to take?
Well, if I'm the only one making remarks, then I'll make one more, which is to make a motion that we approve the resolution. Thank you, sir. I'm bumping things and losing it on the computer. That we adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of American Canyon approving a new environmental sustainability goal and various strategies, including the amendments provided by our city attorney.
I'll second it.
Motion and second, roll call, please.
Councilmember Joseph,
Yes.
Councilmember Washington,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Oro,
Yes.
Mayor Garcia.
Yes, thank you, council. Moving on to management staff oral reports.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. Park and Rec Director Akita has an update for you.
Oh, very good.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Alexandra Ikeda, your Parks and Recreation Director. I'm here this evening to tell you all the wonderful things that are going to be happening over the next couple weeks. Tomorrow night, which is April 3rd, we have our Open Space Active Transportation and Sustainability Commission meeting at 6:30. On April 6th, we have a companion animal wellness clinic that is brought to you by Jameson Humane at the Boys and Girls Club from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Mark your calendars on April 10th, which is next Wednesday. We are going to be doing our ribbon cutting ceremony for the new skate park at Veterans Park at 3:30 p.m. And then on April 11th, we have our Parks and Community Services Commission meeting at 6:30 p.m. And then on April 13th, there is a 20th annual afternoon in the vineyards, and that is from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further, Mr. Holly?
I was just taking notes on the skate park. I thought it was
No,
Thursday. I'm
I
glad
wanna make sure
it's
I get-
Wednesday.
I
I
get
want
to
to make
that.
sure I'm not late. That's all we have, Mayor.
Gonna have to tune up my skateboard. I never worry. I got a walker when I use it, so.
Some of us are too old to be riding skateboards.
Denial
Myself
works.
included.
Denial works. Okay, moving on. Management, staff oral reports. We're done. Mayor, council comments, and committee reports. Anything further to add to yours, Councilmember Joseph?
Just on the NVTA, Napa Valley Transportation Authority, I am part of a talking tour, I guess, to the various communities, city councils throughout the county, trying to get them to endorse the expenditure plan for the new Measure U. Same half-cent sales tax, but with a better program. So far, St. Helena has endorsed it, Yountville has endorsed it, and presumably we will be endorsing it in the near future. So the good news is everybody's on board, and the bad news is we haven't gotten to Napa City, which has been the one question mark floating around. So we'll find out. So that's my latest.
Oh, thank you. Councilmember Washington?
And I do apologize. On the list of fun things to do, remember Friday, April 12th from 6 to 8 p.m., the artist reception for the Art Extravaganza. Free, come on down, refreshments. And then Saturday from 1 to 6 p.m. is the rest of the show, including our cultural diversity program from 4 to 6. This is free, fun, and fully worth it.
All right. Thank you for the heads up. Councilmember Washington?
All I want to do is just echo what Beth Marcus said earlier about our police department. I just want to give them a kudos for a job well done the last couple of days. And then also with the arrests, I just say book them.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Oro?
I have nothing to report, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'll be brief. Mine, Holy Festival. Love that one. It's a paint fight. I think everybody got very well decorated. Made the front page of the Napa paper again, I see. They like to come down and take pictures of that, participate. The photographer actually has a special cover for his camera, so he's learned to protect it. Spring break, well, a lot of activity out there for kids and families this time around. It's the weather committee has done a fantastic job of providing us with some very nice weather. It's just beautiful to be here. I often comment, it's a beautiful day, that's why we live here. Yeah. I had a very great experience over the weekend. The event's called The Backyard. It's actually in Richmond. Found out about it because our son-in-law plays in a band, he's a drummer, and they have entertainment down there. And what it is, it's a small parklet, I would call it here. It's not huge. It's down at the end of Cutting Street, all the way through the industrial area, almost down to the waterfront. And it's between a couple of warehouses. The property owner has taken it, and target audience, it seems to be families with young kids, you know, babes and toddlers and whatnot. And what's great about it is it's a small enough area they can see. It's fenced, by the way, all the way around. You can see your kid out there, whatever they're doing. There's live music, there's a food truck, there's adult beverages, plenty of shade, areas to relax, and you just have a time as a family together with all the kids. And I thought, wow. I was sharing it with Ms. Akita there on with possibilities. But it just, it's been their second year. It's free to get in. So it draws a very large group of local families there. And goes from about 3 hours, and you can spend part of your day there just enjoying company and have a more relaxing time with family. I mean, come on, we all know what 3-year-olds are like, huh? Yeah. So yeah, they're just very energetic and happy. So something I would see if I can get more information on it. See if we can get you folks down there just to show and tell, or have something up this way if there's interest in it. That concludes my report. Future agenda items of note?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like a report from staff on the road repairs at Cartagena. That has been, quite honestly, it was brought to my attention, I think, on the last campaign I was in. So it's been there for a while. So if we could get a report on what's going on and what we can expect to see, I'd appreciate it.
To that note on walkability in American Canyon, excuse me. Yeah, I've had it. There's 6,000 houses. That's not single-family homes. Excuse me. Okay, anything further? Future agenda items?
No, sir.
If not, council, we have concluded our business for the evening. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Good night, American Canyon.